Well then, and pardon our late appearance today, it's been a banner week for space weather. Solar energetic particle events, coronal mass ejections, solar flares, sunspots, a massive decrease in cosmic ray flux, and a lot more. We'll be showing you the most detailed imagery you'll find anywhere in the known universe of the closest star. If you're not familiar with coronal mass ejections, those are when the sun emits massive radiation storms from its atmosphere, known as the corona. You can see one of these happening right here. And one of those coronal mass ejections is earthly directed. Once again, we've got multiple CME impacts, a coronal hole high-speed stream, and lots more to cover. So thanks for stargazing with us here at the Smash News Network, least busted name in news. It's pretty serious. So that's the past 24 hours. You're looking at two coronagraphs there on the SOHO spacecraft, the SOHO LASCO C2 and C3, and the SDO ionized helium wavelength. Here we've brought up two different species of ionized iron from SDO to show you the latest flaring. There was a double M-class flare that occurred, and that pushed out some relativistic particles known as a solar energetic particle event, which are now currently circling Earth's polar regions, causing polar radio blackouts. We've even got higher energy protons this time. It's the largest solar uptick that we've seen so far during cycle 25, at least from the perspective of Earth. There's a full disk 24-hour video, and we're going to show you a lot more solar imagery today, as we've got a ton of spectacular series of images. So here's yet another one. This is ionized helium plus iron, and we'll show another close-up of that massive sunspot now in the northwestern limb. And that double M-class flare was accompanied by an Earth-directed coronal mass ejection. So we've got all kinds of space weather warnings here, so fasten your safety belts if space weather frightens you. Otherwise, just enjoy the scenery. We're hoping for some aurora down at mid-latitudes, and let's see what's going on here on Croissant Earth. So just allow me to get to the previously planned tabs. We're going to show you sunspots here briefly before we talk about volcanoes and earthquakes. So here is yesterday plus today in the SDO intensitygram. No major changes with sunspots since yesterday. Here is the colorized magnetogram. Most of these sunspot groups largely stable. And of course, the largest flare producer was this group up here in the northwestern limb. This group right here is the group to continue to watch. Its likelihood of producing an X-class flare is actually going up as it approaches the solar limb. Interestingly enough, large solar flares are more likely when they're on the edge of the solar disk than when they're right in the middle of the Earth-facing solar disk. All right, so let's get to volcanoes and earthquakes here. We're going to blast through a lot of information. So, earthquake rundown includes Ibu. There's a great photo of Ibu erupting. It's producing a 7,000-foot plume of volcanic ash. Don't pole vault the caldera. It's a flight level 070 over Halmahera. In the Sunda Strait, Krakatoa now back on the list, producing a 1 mile high ash plume. It's a flight level 050. As it explodes, it's a 5,000-foot ash plume over Krakatoa. The daughter of Krakatoa, Semeru, also exploding. Flight level 140, 14,000-foot ash plume over East Java. Dakono exploding, flight level 060 over Halmahera. And headed to North America, Popocatépetl exploding, flight level 230. It's a 23,000-foot ash plume, 24,000-foot ash plume over the South American Nevado de Ruiz, located in Colombia, flight level 240, unable to detect Samancaya. Not sure if it's erupting. Don't pole vault that caldera either. Seismic activity has increased since yesterday's daily space weather video, but no major quakes over the past 24 hours. That's a 90-day bar graph. And here is the past 24 hours. We'll report quakes over a 5 magnitude, and there have been several of them, like this 5.1 on the eastern shores of the Indian Ocean, which has been a commonplace for quakes in the past few months. There was also a 5.0 in the Aleutians there, fairly close to Alaska. Quick reminder that any earthquake can be a foreshock. Oh, and a quick comment here about channels that claim that they forecast earthquakes. We would just like to see somebody actually consistently or ever really effectively forecast an earthquake. It's not that we don't believe earthquakes can be forecasted. It's that we don't believe anybody on YouTube is forecasting earthquakes. In other words, if you say the next large quake is going to be in this area over the next 2 years, that is not a forecast. Does that make sense? All right. Anyway, continuing on, there was also a 5.3 at Japan, a 5.0 at Guam, a 5.0 at Indonesia, and I'll note that there was also a 4.6 in the Gulf of California. Again, remember, any earthquake can be a foreshock, and let's get back to space. Here is the past 24 hours and our house favorite wavelength, 171 angstroms. What's great about 171 angstroms is it shows the lower corona. And this species of ionized iron has a tendency to orient to magnetic field lines, as you can see there. If those look like magnetic field lines, well, it's because all of this material out here is suspended by magnetic fields as it defies the massive gravity of the closest star. The 10.7 centimeter radio flux now at 180 solar flux units. If you're not familiar with a solar flux unit, that's 10,000 Janskys. 10,000 Janskys is just a Jansky is just a measurement of radiation traveling through space. Radio flux now up here at 180. It's represented by the black line in this one-year graph. And let's take a look at the Space Weather Enthusiast dashboard, as it's included a lengthy description here about CME impact. So according to NOAA, rationale, G2 moderate geomagnetic storms are likely on today, the 10th of May, as effects from the apparent arrival of the 7 May CME persist. Dependent upon the CME trajectory, there is a slight and decreasing chance of G3 strong. Levels associated with the CME effect, G1 minor storms are currently anticipated on the 11th as CME influences continue. Also, you can expect another one on the 12th because this hasn't been updated yet today. So the CME that we showed to start out the video will be arriving on the 12th. So lots of CME impacts. And it's going to be a great opportunity to possibly see the aurora once again at mid-latitude. So be prepared and keep following the channel. We'll keep providing updates for you about how to view the aurora at your location. If you do think you're able to see the aurora where you're located, make sure that you take some video or some photos of it, as the aurora is chiefly ultraviolet light, which means it's unable to be viewed by the naked eye. If you take video or photos of it, you may see all kinds of structures up there that you're unable to see. Your camera does pick up portions of the infrared and ultraviolet spectrum. Those portions of the electromagnetic spectrum are not visible to the naked eye. Anyway, that's NOAA's forecast. Expect this to be updated today to include more geomagnetic storm conditions on the 12th. The strongest impact will be the latest CME that's earthly directed. So that was what we started out the video with. Again, expect geomagnetic storm and unrest conditions to continue here for days. I'm not going to get too specific about the timing of these, as we've got enough along with a mixed-in coronal hole high-speed stream that it's pretty tough to predict. So let's just take a look at their forecast model. This is the NOAA forecast model. It's depicting plasma density on the top and plasma velocity on the bottom. You can see that strong impact expected late in the day today to early in the day tomorrow. Again, there is a coronal hole high-speed stream also. So that's NOAA's forecast. And after that plays through, we'll show you NASA's forecast. So this is a different model. NASA's forecast, I like it a lot better because it does show the magnetic fields. As you can see, you see these dotted lines. These are the magnetic fields. And then the colored portion, that is the dynamic pressure of the plasma. So So there you can see that CME. And it looks like the core is not headed directly toward Earth, but it's close. So this one was off a little bit to the northwest. However, the core could actually hit the Earth here. So a large portion of that CME is likely earthly directed. Again, you can expect fireworks for the coming days. Fingers crossed for Aurora in Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania, the location of the Smash News Network least busted name in news. And let's look at the last 4 hours of Earth's magnetic moment from space here, as we see some variations happening in the solar wind there, causing some variations in the magnetohydrodynamic pressure. So this is depicting the last 4 hours of the plasma pressure environment, the magnetohydrodynamic pressure, the units of which are nanopascals. That's our Geospace Magnetosphere movie. We show these daily on the channel, so at least we get a 4-hour run of these space weather modeling frameworks. Depiction of Earth's magnetic moment from space to about 12 Earth diameters. Next, Earth's magnetic moment from the ground. This will show you the most likely places to see telluric currents, the aurora, pipeline, railway, and power grid induction. It's our ground magnetic perturbations map. And there are also other features that we can show. This is the daily space weather, so we'll continue with monitoring of this in YouTube live streams throughout the day today. So we used to put most of our live content on Twitch. Now most of our live content is on YouTube. So thanks to our YouTube subscribers for tolerating the pathetic, putrid, and disgusting censorship on the platform. And if you think deboosting is not a form of censorship, we would state that ultra-rich, ultra-already famous people have stale, boring ideas. And we need more ideas and more eyes on things in space, not less. So anyway, KP index is currently at 3.66. 3.66666666, rounded to 3.67. So that's the planetary K index, a general average of global geomagnetism. And let's take a look at the real-time solar wind, which is all over the place. And these variations are an indication that there is a coronal hole high-speed stream signal mixed in with the coronal mass ejection. There may be some canceling out of each other happening here, or maybe just some error reporting. You can see some error bars showing up down here. Look at the variations in the plasma temperature. That's this bottom frame down here in green. Those variations of the plasma temperature are likely the CME and the coronal hole high-speed stream showing up at the same time. So current conditions are quite elevated here. 670 kilometers per second for the solar wind speed. Solar wind density here just below 9 protons per cubic centimeter. Make it 9.5 protons per cubic centimeter. The rest of that is fairly unremarkable. And the arrival of the CME impact was right here. I mean, you can see this really obvious signal. You can see changes in the BTBZ. That's the total field and the vertical component of it. The phi angle shifts were minor. There were variations in the solar wind density and the solar wind speed as well. The solar wind density made it all the way up to 60 protons per cubic centimeter, make it 65. Solar wind speed made it up to about 700 kilometers a second, close to it. 680. So, but since then things have been subsiding. That wasn't like a direct CME impact. The effects of it were not long lasting. Keep in mind that real-time solar wind is measured outside of Earth's magnetosphere at Lagrangian point 1. Next to GOES magnetometers here, and you see huge variations happening there. That is consistent with CME impacts and coronal hole high-speed streams. Expect the GOES magnetometers to be all over the place for the coming days, as there will be a lot of plasma striking the Earth magnetosphere. Next, our top view ecliptic plane field plot. There is a south pole current sheet headed this way, as you can see there. And it looks like it's actually getting delayed. I forecasted it speeding up. This is an indication that we may see... Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, we might see some new sunspots showing up in the southern hemisphere, the southeastern limb of the sun, based on this data. Because, well, as you might be able to see over there in the east, which is this side, the side on which space weather rises, that's the west, you see this sector boundary crossing. It looks like it's almost moving backwards there with respect to the solar rotation. That could be an indication that we are about to see an active region rise in the southeast. So that's extending the North Pole current sheet, perhaps. So that's something to look for, possible activity in the southeastern limb. Next, our line of sight field plot. This depicts the solar polar fields in green for north and red for south, the solar B field in blue, and the gong magnetogram there in grayscale. Lots of activity on the Earth-facing portion of the solar disk and now coronal holes. So here's our SDO coronal hole view. We put up 193 angstroms today. We do have some South Pole-oriented coronal holes rotating in here. So this is actually depicting 4 days. And if we bring up the latest image, oh, okay, I don't see any South Pole-oriented coronal holes, so I stand corrected. All the coronal holes you see there are North Pole-oriented. And there are some massive plasma filaments also. This is the Jerry Seinfeld, this is the Larry David, and this is the Bill Burr. All right, continuing on to sunspots. And we did see at least one more named group here. It's 3303. And they decided to name this group here 2 sunspots. I think that's 1 sunspot, but whatever. That's, as classified here, that would be 2 alpha class sunspots. I think that's 1 beta class sunspot, but this is why we don't get hung up on the names, because they are basically arbitrary. The naming of sunspots really isn't saying anything about the physics, which is, by the way, what we're interested in the channel. The reason we do these videos is because as I have been since 1979, been interested in advancing the science of cosmology. So there's what's going on with sunspots. No major changes since yesterday. And here are some great views. The past 24 hours in SDO continuum. We'll also add 131 angstroms to that to show the active regions. The most active of which is, of course, in the upper right there. That is the sunspot that's been producing all the large flares. And we'll also show 1600 plus 1700 angstroms because, well, it's just sweet. Now you might see a lot of white showing up over here when those M-class flares occurred. That is carbon mysteriously showing up there at the same moment as the solar flare. Why do you think that is, folks? Any idea? Any ideas? Let us know in the comments why you think there's a lot of carbon showing up there at the time of the solar flare. Do you think it might be because fusion is occurring right there in front of your SDO's instruments? Or is there carbon just mysteriously arriving and then vanishing because a flare happened? What do you think? Let us know in the comments. Just kidding, folks. It's because fusion is occurring around the moment of that flaring. Anyway, fantastic imagery, and don't worry, we've got more. Let's move on to solar flares and energetic particles. We've had a proton event, and it's still increasing here. So we're well above warning levels for the greater than 10 mega electron volt proton flux. We've also had a little spike in the greater than 50 mega electron volt proton flux. And that is the first time in solar cycle 25, I believe, that we had at least that significant of a proton event. This is the strongest proton event of the cycle. And it looks like the sun is indeed off to the races. So, yeah, that's a significant solar energetic particle event. It's not what you'd call an extreme one. But as you can see there on that top line, the greater than 10 mega electron volt proton flux is still rising. So this does cause polar radio blackouts. You can see huge amounts of attenuation, especially around the North Polar region. Also around the Southern Ocean, a large area of likely radio high-frequency attenuation. In fact, even some very high-frequency attenuation. I think that's like 10 to 300 megahertz or something like that would be the VHF spectrum. This is just the HF spectrum. A lot of radio signals are making it out into space, instead of refracting from the ionosphere back to Earth. So this is actually one of the things that we do monitor throughout the day. This is one of the things that we stream as well, because this shows you not only the status of the SEP, the solar energetic particle event, it also shows you the effects of the flaring. That would be the equatorial portion. You see these flashes, that is the X-ray output. And when you see large flares, you see large radio blackouts at the equator. At the moment, we are in a C-class background level, coming up significantly here. So, huge solar uptick here as solar cycle 25 leaves solar cycle 24 in the dust. If you think it's a grand solar minimum, you are believing dogma as opposed to objective reality. That is not a grand solar minimum by any stretch of the imagination. Solar cycle 25 is vaporizing solar cycle 24. That's the past 24 hours in SDO 131 plus 94 angstroms. Let's get a little closer. Once again, to show this quite active region. And again, as it approaches the limb, its likelihood of producing an X-class flare rises precipitously. Could it be because solar flares are anisotropic, meaning that they appear at a different intensity based on viewing angle? Well, we think so. And lots of other people are starting to think so as well. It's pretty serious. So, that's the situation with solar flaring and energetic particle events. Next, let's briefly calm down here and take a look at what's going on over our heads. So Venus is just peeking over the horizon here, although it's not visible because it's daytime in Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania. If you're outside around dusk, and the likelihood of that seems to be rising, especially if you're somebody who wants to get imagery or see with your own eyes the aurora borealis or perhaps australis, you might catch a glimpse of Venus. Of course, the moon is also setting there over in the southwest. And by the way, today's featured product is Fauci Face of Evil. Yeah, Face of Evil, Tony Fauci, fraudster. Why is that? Well, because when a pattern of fraud emerges, for some reason the Face of Evil feels a need to expose itself to you. I guess because you have to choose to decide to go along with the evil nonsense of evil fraudster phonies. Yeah, the face of evil, it just always seems to reveal itself, and then some people who are completely blinded and hypnotized by utter nonsense and propaganda and disinformation, especially on the internet, thanks big tech, just go along with it, and they just go, oh, it's for your own good. Anyway, the point is, once Fauci committed fraud 3 times, that's what you call a pattern. 2 data points does not a pattern make. You need at least 3 data points to have a pattern. And we saw a pattern of fraud back in December of 2020. And by the way, my foot right now is on my Face of Evil Tony Fauci fraudster bath mat. If you want to put your feet on the Face of Evil on the daily, we've got you covered. Next, your solar system forecast. You can find links below the video, by the way, to the Redbubble shop. Here's your solar system forecast. And by the way, accountability always comes, even to space weather frauds. All right, so let's advance this 1 week to show you what's going on in the solar system as Mercury is about to head over to join the gas giants on the opposite side of the solar system. Here's where things will be on the 17th of May as we approach the May new moon. Next, we'll look at coronal mass ejections, and it has been interesting to say the least. Right at the end of this video, you'll see the next Earth-directed one. That'll have a large portion of it earthly directed, and we're expecting like an 18-hour geomagnetic storm as a result of that one. Having already had elevated conditions, we're expecting a very hard hit, as there will be a very low amount of plasma between the sun and Earth by the time that arrives above your doorstep. It's not going to arrive at your doorstep because the Earth has a magnetosphere, so the plasma doesn't make it to the ground level. Here are today's coronagraphs from George Mason University. As you can see, coronal mass ejections continuing, and the likelihood of coronal mass ejections continuing is nearly 100%. So here are the Soho LASCO C2 and C3. We're also going to show stereo A. Here's a brief run of Soho LASCO. We also like to show stereo A just to show some additional data here to sort of verify what's going on. Stereo A located here on the left. Slightly behind Earth, orbitally speaking, there's some great imagery of that CME propagating. Expect that to arrive on the 12th, and thanks for leaving a comment. Tin Man 1057, good morning to you, sir. We hope today finds you well. So here are our 24-hour coronagraphs. You've got SDO 193 in the middle, plus the Soho LASCO C2 and C3. Let's get a little closer. And that major CME came from this area right here. There's an even closer view. And we started out the video with 304 angstroms because that is also good at showing the plasma propagate. Huge plasma plume up here continues to be in the, that's kind of on the opposite side of the sun there. So that must be a massive plasma filament. That looks like it's north of this sunspot group. So there may be another active region up there, and there may be a strong sunspot rising down here in the southeast. So that's the situation. Let's talk about filaments next. And we've been naming them after living people. Again, this is the, ignore that. This is the Jerry Seinfeld. This is the Larry David. And this is the Bill Burr. We need a name for this filament, as these do have the propensity to become coronal mass ejections. So if you want to name a filament after a living person, name that one in the southeast rising just above the limb there. On our Twitter, follow the hashtag #NameThatFilament. Name That Filament is a great hashtag to follow over on Twitter, and if you want to see auroral shares and all kinds of other important science stuff that you won't see anyplace else, follow us on Twitter. If you've unplugged entirely from social media, we don't blame you at all, because it is truly pathetic and vomit-inducing with the ridiculous censorship, propaganda, disinformation, and general nonsense. Big Tech. A fine job you're doing, Big Tech. A fine job. Your junkware became deathware in 2020. Yeah, junkware. It became deathware in 2020. If you like things like lifestyle and fitness posts, join us over on Instagram, putting up regular imagery of what we're eating, like last night's tacos or yesterday's bike ride. So follow us over there if you're interested in that sort of stuff. And let's take a look at filaments here from our custom 24-hour Helio Viewer movies. So there's the northern hemisphere. There's another crown prominence showing up here. This could turn into another one of those solar polar cyclones, which fearmongers are probably going to tell you are very scary. They're not scary. They're just aesthetically pleasing. So there is that's actually the Jerry Seinfeld filament. You can see the Larry David filament down here and the Bill Burr filament just below it. Here's the equatorial region. That will include that double M class flare, the one that was associated with that solar energetic particle event. And in some ways, that activity right there is some of the most geo-effective activity of the entire solar cycle, again, because of that greater than 50 mega electron volt proton flux that we saw arriving. If you think we're missing out on the southern hemisphere, we've also got the southern polar region for you. Who are you going to name that filament after? Let us know on Twitter. No, you can't do it in the YouTube comments. And if you're watching the videos on BitChute, you're missing like 90% of the content. So if you're not subscribed on YouTube, I don't know what to tell you. I feel sorry for you because, and by the way, we don't endorse products that I don't use myself. I'm not only Smash-O-Mash, I'm also a client. And thanks for leaving comments, Cookie Spacey. So there's the full disk view in the filamentary glory of 193 plus 304 angstroms. probably the best composite wavelengths through which to show solar filaments. It shows fantastic contrast. And let's see what's been going on in the past couple of hours here. This is the past about 2 hours from the GOES 16 SUVI. And let's briefly just zoom out so you can see the time and date stamps, and then move on to our bonus features segment. All right, so bonus features are starting out with satellite charging hazards, and we've got some significant surface charging hazards there in the moving into the Central Pacific Ocean, mainly the Western and Central Pacific at the moment. Those surface charging hazards caused by low energy electrons, they build up on the outside of spacecraft occasionally, like now, and those can cause some minor communications breakdowns. Perhaps things like your GOES West might show some little anomalies happening. There is your GOES electron flux, which was coming up and then it cratered again. Again, there was a coronal hole high-speed stream, I believe, mixed in as that CME arrived late last night. Like it arrived just before midnight. So that's the GOES electron flux. There is the forecast model by NOAA, getting a little bit higher than expected. And this could be all over the place now, so I've got no forecast at the moment. There are too many variables at play. Here's the one-year graph to put it in context. That is from Solon.info. Those electrons are measured using radiography from the geosynchronous orbits of the GOES 16 and GOES 18, and they're measured at the F layer of the ionosphere. Located at 300 kilometers of altitude, here's one slice of the vibrational frequency of Earth's upper thermosphere. It's the bridge between Earth and space. As we get closer and closer to Earth weather and farther from space weather. This is still space weather, by the way. Anyway, we'll let that play through all the way. This is courtesy of Australian Government Bureau of Meteorology, and then we'll show the anomalygram. This is anomaly in megahertz from a 30-day median. It's shown daily on the channel. Our channel has created a catalog of the ionosphere for the last, 4 or 5 years, and these space weather videos are pushing 6 years. We've only missed about 4 or 5 days throughout that entire period. And here's the latest image, 12:30 Universal Time ionogram and 12:30 Universal Time anomalygram. We're also going to show the total electron content. That shows the free electrons up to about 12,500 miles of altitude. Feel free to pause the video on this frame if you're not familiar with the distances to things like the Outer Van Allen Belt, the SDO, etc. Here's the total electron content. It'll show you the most likely places to see GPS errors. And there are some oddities happening here. No real surprise there. Has Earth's magnetic field turned into a quadrupole or an octopole? No, it certainly hasn't. It would definitely show up in various data sets that we show on these daily space weather videos. It's just not happening. If you think Earth's poles are going to reverse, I would beg to differ. If you'd like to argue in the comments, feel free. Keep in mind, we don't mute, block, or ban people. Here is the North American total electron content anomaly from the 10-day average. We like to show this daily because if there is any ability to use this data to forecast earthquakes, we want to do it for North America and then figure out how to do it for the rest of the world. If I were trying to use the total electron content to forecast earthquakes, what I would do is I would pick the most local fault lines and try to forecast for those. However, since I cover heliophysics for the purposes of cosmology, I am currently uninterested in this until we publish our paper explaining the mechanism that underlies the solar sunspot cycles. Last but not least, here are the latest colorized magnetogram and colorized solar intensitygram. So maybe this sunspot is going to strengthen. That magnetic data that I was talking about earlier has massive predictive value. The top view ecliptic plane field plot, it's a big deal. And highly recommend understanding how that correlates. When you immerse yourself in the data, you often end up with answers to questions not asked That's what's going on, and it's time to transition to our meteorology segment. So thanks for tuning into the Smash News Network, least busted name in news. Once again, let's blast through meteorology. Current thing we're looking at is pressure. Yeah, MSLP. That's the mean sea level pressure. We're looking at the lowest pressure in the world right here, located in the Southern Ocean. Off the coast of Antarctica, there is a pressure of 953 hectopascals. That is the world's lowest pressure. The world's highest pressure might be nearby as well. Over the highest, driest continent, there's 1,053. 1,053, that's a pretty high pressure environment indeed. There's 1,058. And I just want you to imagine something. Imagine pressing your hand down in a kiddie pool, right? What's going to happen? You're going to create a high pressure zone under your hand, which causes the water to lift up, creating low pressure zones around it as it tries to reach static equilibrium. In this case, pressure equilibrium. This also happens on planet Earth. High pressure systems, they blow, and low pressure systems, they suck. You can see the wind blowing toward those lows. That is the mean sea level pressure. And those pressures in the Southern Ocean are considerably lower than any place else on Earth. Hurricane-like pressures, although it is autumn in the Southern Hemisphere. Anyway, here are your surface winds and jet streams. There's the eastern world. Strong low here in the Bay of Bengal. Here are the jet streams of this side of the planet. Here are the jet streams of the west. A bunch of warm air here striking the south of Greenland, so that's going to cause some epic snowmelt. Warm air there striking Greenland as we speak. Here are the surface winds. It's looking likely wet and warm on the southern tip of Greenland. Based on that information, if you understand atmospheric physics, you could probably agree with my forecast. Here is the surface wind scenario for the Central world, Europe, Africa, and the Middle East, and there is the jet stream scenario. Next, we're going to show clouds and fog briefly over the Americas. So that's our shortwave radiation map. And we highly recommend that you use this if you're trying to decide whether or not to go out and try to film the aurora. This will show you whether or not it's cloudy. Of course, you could always go outside and look for stars, but if you're too lazy to do that, you can use a shortwave radiation map to see if it's foggy or cloudy at nighttime. Next, our weather.gov map. If your location is lit, head to weather.gov, the home page of the National Weather Service, and click your location. There's the key. We've got a bunch of flooding forecasted here. So let's look at some forecasts based on the GFS 72-hour model. Here's the GFS 72-hour pressure and precipitation forecast, and you've got some extreme weather coming to the Texan Gulf Coast once again. Also, much of Texas here expecting some extreme weather coming in the following days. Those could produce damaging wind, hail, and tornadoes, so be aware of that. That is a serious system right there at the end of the run. Your 72-hour GFS pressure and precipitation forecast. Here is your 72-hour GFS positive accumulated snow depth change forecast, as all the hot air coming out of Colorado is unable to make it stop snowing. Yeah. Colorado, it's the capital of global warming because the amount of hot air that comes out of that state possibly exceeds the entire nation of China. Colorado, it's the hot air capital of the world, perhaps. Although there is some real information coming out of there. Shout out to Scott McIntosh. Next, since there's going to be some flooding, especially in Nebraska, but also Montana, Texas, Colorado, Wyoming, Montana, North Dakota, a little bit in Louisiana, Florida, and Georgia. That's your 72-hour total accumulated precipitation in inches. Based on the GFS model. And here is our lightning mapper, and there has been some extreme lightning here around the Texas-Mexico border especially. Looks like it's a bad day, or it's been a bad 12 hours to have crossed into Texas from the ocean, from Mexico. Anyway, here's a real-time lightning map, courtesy of lightningmaps.org. And do we have some active cells? I just saw a single strike in Wisconsin, also some in Nebraska. The most extreme weather here is just south of Houston. Hey, Galveston. Dag. Galveston and Houston. There is certainly thunder rolling in. That is a significant thunderstorm. And shout out to WOT Arty Noobs for citing that he was following the lightningmaps.org in UK yesterday. So hopefully he hasn't been struck by lightning and he's still viewing the videos. Today's featured product from our Amazon shop is our bunker tubs. Yeah, we've got bunker tubs. So if you want to check out some of our endorsements, you can find them at amazon.com/shop/smashomash. That is linked below this video, as well as on our homepage, smashomash.com. The bunker tubs are in our office furniture solutions section. It'll show you some of the things that we've used to create the operation that is creating these videos. The Smash News Network, least busted name in news. More stuff coming there soon. Also, you can find bulk spices and some coffee selections and some kitchen gadgets. Please support the channel via clicks. Smashomash.com is the homepage, and welcome to the Neo Renaissance. Back in 2019, we launched the site. Why? Well, because a crack YouTube unit was sent to social media prison, Facebook, for a crime we didn't commit. We promptly escaped a maximum security, pathetic, ridiculous social media stockade to the internet underground, where we survive as producers of fortune. If you have a problem, if no one else can help, and if you can find the content, maybe you can hire the Smash team. No, you certainly can, because there's a link right there, as well as in the header. There's a graphical link and a link in the header to the Smash team, so you can certainly hire the Smash team by sending us a few bucks per month at the silver or gold level to continue creating these videos. It's only the most detailed space weather and comprehensive imagery of the sun in the known universe. You can also find our Hemp Lucid shop on the homepage at smashomash.com or below this video. Save some dough on checkout by entering the promo code SMASHOMASH at the Hemp Lucid store. Shop by solution. Shop your CBD tinctures, maybe some CBD balms, maybe some mushroom gummies, and lots more. On the Hemp Lucid shop, again, enter the promo code SMASHOMASH. And to support the channel via subscription services, become a gold or silver Smash Team member. We also do send out email alerts, even to bronze Smash Team members, for things like tsunamis and significant space weather events. Smash Team, look for some serious email notifications coming soon. We even notify Smash Team members about videos like this one becoming YouTube exclusives. So thanks again to the Smash Team. The best value is the gold annual paid-up subscription. And we're going to close out the video with some satellite imagery, some ground-based radar, and some imagery of clouds and fog and water vapor. So let me just initialize those for you to prevent the possibility of any crashes happening. And there is a reason why we stream these videos live. It's because they are extremely time-sensitive products. So here we go. Here is the satellite imagery over the lower 48. Here is the animated U.S. Doppler radar map. .9 micrometer infrared radiation depicts clouds and fog when it's too dark over half the country to use the visible satellite. And there is the water vapor map. So that should help to clarify things. Once again, thanks for tuning into the Smash News Network, least busted name in news. Congratulations on realizing this channel exists. We need your assistance to get the videos onto people's screens, so press that share button, press comment, look for some shorts coming once again today, and we'll see you soon. In the meantime, I'll have been your host, Dan, a.k.a. Smash-O-Mash, signing off. And may that solar wind be at your back.